What's going on, Trading View? What's up, YouTube? What's up, traders of all capacities, sizes, and what's going on, everyone? I see myself live on Trading View. I don't see myself up on YouTube yet, so I do now. I don't yet. Anyways, I'm just gonna dive in. What's going on, everyone? Thank you all for tuning into another chart mastery, another lunchtime stream. We're going to go over the charts, right? We're going to try to stay objective. We're going to cover BTC. Today's order, I'm going to cover Bitcoin. I'm going to cover Ether. I'm going to cover Litecoin, Link. And then I'm going to cover the indices, S&P, QQQ. And then I'll dive into any chart requests that you guys have. All right, what's up, Delilah? Thanks for always tuning in, Delilah. Thank you for all your ticker suggestions. Thank you all for tuning in. And let's dive in, right? Let's dive in. Some interesting volatility, right? A couple of streams ago, last Wednesday, I talked about, we're going to see a pullback on a couple of cryptos. I saw them coming. On others, I did not, right? Like, I saw the pullback on Litecoin and Link, like, at the very top during the stream, and I mentioned it was a good time to take out a short and a hedge those. Some of the other cryptos I didn't, but that's why we trade what we see, right? That's what's important in the market. And in terms of BTC, we're retesting previous resistance, right? We're retesting previous resistance, which is at 63,705. This fib extension was the previous stop, along with 64,435, right? These two fibs kind of coincide and overlap and cause this resistance to occur, and we're retesting it right now. One thing that I'm not a big fan of is what we saw kind of overnight, right? This overnight move that went up to the 50% fib didn't really it closed above the 50 on a small scale on intraday, didn't really get all the way up to 61.8. I'm not a fan of that because, that's typically where I'd want to interact and take out a short after a dip. And it's not the first time we see this pattern, right? We saw something very similar happen back here, right? And I talked about this back then, and it was actually just like a 50% close above it. I was waiting for 64,141, never got it. I wasn't quite waiting for this one just yet. I did mention on the Wednesday stream that we could see a dip to like 233 on Litecoin, and I'll talk about why. In terms of this BTC pullback, where do I see it stopping? I'd want to see the retest of the actual fib, right? Like 63,600, 700 level. It's tricky, right? It's tricky because this chart is like extending. It's still not below. It's going to retest that previous resistance, right? So like the previous all-time high, which we rang earlier this year. So I want to see that retest occur and see what happens there. And if it keeps pulling back, we could be retracing the previous extensions. So the first level of support I want to say is going to be that fib, right? Just saying objective. This is going to be our first level of support that we want to see hold. And if it does pull back a little further, last time we did this 50% retracement and continued down, I thought it would go lower. But could we have interacted with it? And where could we have? Was it this low that gave us an extension to interact with? Possibly, but we don't have really a swing low on this upwards move, right? Like we did here, like this wick. We don't really have one, so it makes it a little trickier to interact with. So I'm probably not going to try to leverage anything to the upside, and I don't think we're going to have a big dump incoming just yet. We could, but I didn't see the 61.8 happen before, and usually we see one of those like we did previously, and it was a multi-day one, and we literally had a lot of friction there for days before the dump, right? So I'm not trying to get philosophical. I'm just trying to figure out where would we want to hedge a short, and we didn't quite get that move to 61.8. So I don't foresee that just yet. We might see a savage sell-off and then a pullback, and that would be like my full-blown short signal. I don't see one of those yet. if you guys have any more questions on BTC, this would be the time to ask them, because I'm getting ready to move on to the next chart. In terms of moving average support, right, we have the 30-day weighted moving average, which has held up. It's the yellow line on my chart, the 30 WMA, and that's held up consistently, you know, throughout this whole move. A pullback to the 50 could create a buy opportunity, right? And that's at 58,000. What are fibs saying, like, in terms of this larger swing? Let me go ahead and remove indicators again and just try to get I want to get two sets of fibs set up, right? One on this swing low. Let's use this lower one to that top, right? We should give us like an absolute counter trade. I mean, if this pulls back to 50,000, I'm counter trading that 100%, right? I'm gonna set an alert right now. If this pulls back to 50K, I'm leveraging a long right here, right? Like, just like when I said, you know, when LTC gets up to the 61.8 bearish retracement, I'm gonna hedge a short. So like that would be an absolute yes interaction for me. And off this move, right? Like 63,000 flat. If you get bullish rejection here, I might want to leverage along. But until then, like I'm not gonna touch it until it comes down to a level that I'm comfortable with in terms of fib retracements. All right, let's look at BTC Dominance. I mean, I'm not really paying attention much to BTC.D, because if you look at a lot of the alts, I mean, in terms of alt BTC pairs, the market pump and dumps those just to like have an exchange of wealth, right? Like just an exchange of wealth happening. But we're seeing a lot more focus on USD traded alts, USD pairs versus BTC pairs. And that's just what the market dynamic has shifted to. So I don't really like pay much attention to this chart anymore. All right, so I'm going to cover my order. So I'm going to go into ETH USD. And once again, oh, my fibs are gone. All right, I should move drawings. Start this one over. I should probably like save this chart in trading view so I don't have to like restart drawing it every time. I had a target of 49.76, right? And we didn't quite get there yet. I want to see what fibs are more compliant. Like these are pretty compliant. We saw 1800 hold as support 3 times, and that's clearly a fib level. And then we saw 2267 act as resistance and the sell-off back down. So we saw these fibs play out. We saw resistance at 3619. And it looks like the trend line's breaking, right? So we might be in, this is either a bear trap that's setting up. Yeah, definitely. Well, trend lines on the closes haven't really broken. So the trend looks like it's been intact, but there's been some heavy selling. Like these are 1, 2, 3, 4 red candles right in a row. So it could have been bear trapping. And if it was, and we could see a squeeze higher. But if it wasn't, like, why did the market decide to turn before the fib target? I don't quite understand. And yeah, I think the first level of support here is going to be 44.19 if you start getting a breakdown. And yeah, I was pretty optimistic about getting to 4900, and we never got there, right? Like it's also been choppy in nature, right? We're seeing these candles up, candles down. So it's like there's nothing clearly to interact with. The trend is bullish, still intact for now. But if we do see that dip in BTC, then we could definitely see the rest of the market follow. I think, down to 33.49 on a savage sell-off would be a good place to interact for now. When Moon, what's up? Mohammed, what's up? AFFX, you guys, thanks for tuning into the stream. Smash that like button for me. Everybody smash that like button for me. I need y'all support today. I do. All right, let's look at LTC. Right, let's look at Litecoin because it paved the way. It literally told us when to flip short on a bearish 61.8 retracement, and now we saw the 61.8 play out on Litecoin. Right, I should have reshorted, and I just figured be patient with it, and I didn't reshort. But on Wednesday's stream, we were up here. We were literally like making this candle. We made this candle, and we were making the following one. And if you go on like a 15, and that's exactly what I showcased during that stream, I said we're seeing a long-term bearish 61.8 on the daily, right? Which was this move from this swing high up here to the swing low at 103 to 296 was a bearish 61.8. And then once we go to the 15-minute, right, we had a really tiny one unfold. Like during my stream, I said, hey, like this is the opportunity to take out a short and hedge along. And then we saw a 15% pullback, right? And at this point, what happened in terms of the continuation swing? Well, we got up to 61.8 and rejected. Now we're seeing some support at 266. Is that a level I want to interact with? I'm not quite sure. I want to see more of a confirmation. One thing that has me a little optimistic is 252 held up as support, right? It did, and it did this several times, and it's kind of a... There's a trend line there. There's a couple of reasons why it did this. There's a trend line there that used to be resistance, and the chart broke above. And there's also the minor 61.8 off that trend break, right? So like off this minor swing low, that was the 61.8. And the chart broke below it and then closed above, then went on this micro run. But I do think, if BTC sells off and Ether sells off, I think 233, that was my target for the short that we took up on Wednesday, right? So I do think we could come back to 233, and that would be an absolute level that I'm going to want to interact with. Now, looking up here, if 279, if we close above 279, then I'd say, hey, like get out of the shorts. This thing's going up, and we're going to see Litecoin run. Vice Prez, I'll get to Facebook shortly. Now I want to cover the QQQ and the S&P, and then I'll start whacking tickers left and right. I'm getting some notifications on my phone. Let's not do that while I'm streaming, guys. Thank you. All right. So the S&P did a 786 retracement, right? Let's look at ES futures. And it sold off at the 786. I don't know if it got up all the way up there, but we're going to take this last swing high and put it on my chart. There we go. And it dipped past 46.79, right? So what happened last week, our consensus was, we shorted this 2 weeks ago up here. We bought puts. I got out of the puts over here on this break because it defied the minor 61.8, right? And so I took profit on those, and now we're seeing another dip. Now, do I want to buy this dip? I don't think I'm ready to buy the dip on the S&P. I want to look for another minor 61.8 that we can short, right? I want to look at another swing rejection, one that makes sense for me to interact with. So right now I'm pretty much sidelined here, and I'm kind of wishing I had VIX exposure. Markets are looking, they're looking a little shaky. I haven't really read up on news and what the Biden administration is doing. That kind of stuff just been triggering me, so I'm not keeping up with it. I'm just staying objective and looking at charts, right? So I want to see something like this unfold before I buy more puts, and which would be like a swing failure, right? Some kind of bearish 61.8 retracement on a 5-minute chart, just like we saw that one on the daily on LTC, but then traded the 15 and it played out wonderfully, right? So all right, we'll look at SHIB. All right, let me look at the QQQ before I start going into requests so we don't get sidetracked. So that's what I'm looking for on the ES, right? And the S&P. Now, what did the QQQ do? Pretty much something very similar. So at this point, I either want to buy I want to counter trade the next low, or I want to short the next short-term 61.8 on the QQQ and the S&P. All right. Now that I've covered indices, let's look at you guys' sticker requests. I'm going to start with FB, with Facebook. I had a few requests to look at this over the weekend. We can't really trade over the weekend, so I kind of like put them on a side burner. A lot of you guys are talking about this inverse head and shoulders, right? You got shoulder, head, shoulder. I mean, I could use the actual tool, but you guys see it. You guys talked about it. I'm not a big fan of this formation, and especially not in traditional markets, right? Is that valid? It could be. At what point would I consider Facebook going for a run? I think it would be 355, right? A break above 355, and then we can go up, right? And if you guys think I'm like biased towards this chart, I'm going to show you guys a parallel, something that I mentioned about Apple, right? And I had an Apple short, and then earnings came up, and we get out of the short because it didn't really quite dump at earnings. But what Apple did was it sold off. I'm just going to put them side by side, right? It did something very similar, somewhat of an inverse head and shoulders. Is it raining? It's raining wildly out here. Okay, it took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that. So what we saw Apple do was roll up in earnings, get up to the 61.8, which is that red line at 150. You guys see that? And it just chopped. It went up, and then it went back down. It went up, it went back down. Then we saw rejection, a pretty big wick, right? A pretty big like hammer doji candle on the 2 hour. And now it's like retesting it from the top down, that 149 level, which is 61.8. So looking at Facebook, I think it could very much likely do something like that. You know, I don't know how far in a meta they're developed, right? Like, yeah, they changed the name. They're working on some cool things. We don't know how widely accepted it's going to be. If you die in metaverse, you die in real life type Zuckerberg talk, you know. Once again, I'm going to stay objective and look at the chart. And just like what we saw on Apple, I'm not ready to take out longs on anything. Not right now. Not right now. Looking back at, you know, something I mentioned on like the S&P, thinking this could still be a bull trap, right? Which is exactly what we saw in 2018, right before Christmas dip. And I'm just going to pull up the charts for a parallel. And definitely want to see a retest of 456, right? And so I'm just going to look up and show you guys the parallel we saw in 2018. And I've been saying this could be very much a repeat of 2018 because of how much indices, how much everything appreciated in price after COVID crash, right? So we see this new high and then a smaller correction, a smaller pullback. Let's just measure it so we don't say small, right? Like a 6% pullback. Here I think we saw a steeper one, a 10% pullback, right? But then consolidation, and then we saw a new high. So we saw this blow off, right? Consolidation, new high. And then we saw a liquidity move in the Christmas crash, right? And I'm not saying we're going to see another Christmas crash, but looking at this, it's still looking like a possibility that we are looking at a trap, right? And if we look at 456, it hasn't been retested, not from the upside, right? Not like, I mean, just like when I posted, just like when I wrote on COVID dip in December 2019 saying, hey, this rally is speculative because 307 hasn't been retested, right? So in December 2019, I was in Dallas and I said, hey, this looks like it's going to melt down, right? And this was, we were here and I was saying that we're going to have a meltdown for a big retest on the weekly. And then we melted down way beyond my target. And the COVID was the catalyst. Back then, I did not have a fundamental reason other than the chart was saying there's probably a retest. I'd like to see liquidity retested at 456, right? I'd like to see that. All right. Which kind of goes in Facebook, Apple, Tesla. You know, those charts kind of have to correct for us to see that. All right. Now that I've ranted about what I wanted to rant on, let's go over SHIB. All right. Man, this chart is it's pretty annoying. It's a hype trade, right? This is a shitcoin with no value other than hype. It's more than likely a pump and dump, right? And just being objective. We saw I'm just gonna call it, 5,000th of a dollar hold as support. Okay. We saw resistance at 81. So what happened in between, right? What happened in between? That's what's important. The first time SHIB was brought up on stream, I think it was by Delilah, and we caught an amazing short, right? A great short opportunity at the 61.8. Then it pulled up to the 50, and then it continued down, right? And then we shorted the 50 again, and then we shorted the following 61.8. Because if you just by doing the same thing, following the swings, right? If this was our breakdown swing point, and we go down to the swing low, what happened here? 64, 65, we had another breakdown, right? Once we had the secondary breakdown, how has that changed anything? Well, that's our breaking point. What happened to the following 61.8? 57.86, right? So the market's still short. The market is still short. Is it getting a short squeeze, or is this just profit taking? What's going on right now, right? So if this is our next breakdown point, I'm gonna place a new fib there and fib this following move. We're still rejecting at 55.21, right? So as of now, this chart is likely still bearish. Is it looking like it's trying to break out? It is. But on the way up, there's going to be several 61.8 resistances that it's going to have to take out before it makes a new high, right? The first one being 57.90. I'm just going to leave these on the chart, right? The second one would be this previous high, right? 64.73, which coincides with this one. And the major one, like if we get a massive pump and a massive move up, where I'd want to short this thing is going to be on the bigger swing, right? So if this bumps up, I'm going to assess it at 57.90, right? Just because I think it's a pump and dump. And I'm biased. And I will admit that. 64.63 would be the next target. And the final one would be 71.45. And at that point, if I see a wick happen there, I'm going to Godzilla short this with a big position, because it would probably be doing something like Doge did. Right? Let's go to the daily. I think the Godzilla short position would have been this one. And was this a 61.8 of which move? It was, right? And that would have been, if you put these up in comparison, let me see if I can go right back to SHIB. There we go. I'll put Doge next to it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'm just doing a deep dive here, right? This is called chart mastery, so I just want to give you guys my opinion. I want to show you guys what I see and why I see it, and why I trade the way I trade, and I interact with markets the way I interact with markets, right? So this would have been not even the highest swing, right? The highest swing, the big swing would have been, the big swing target would have been 52 cents, but we never got there. The market took that final swing here. So I think in terms of comparison, I think 62... Let's get rid of the small one. Right? I think we could see a move to like 62.91. You guys see the parallel a little bit, right? If we get a move to 62.91, that's where I'd want to start shorting. with a tight stop, of course. I'm not gonna average all the way up. I don't do that. If I'm wrong, I'm out. All right. I'm gonna take some of Delilah's tickers. I'm seeing a lot of the same tickers. AVAX, CRO, 1. I would look away from trying to trade a Bitcoin SHIB parallel hedge correlation. I wouldn't want to bet on that too much. All right, let's look at EGLD tethered chart. Auto. This looks like it's range bound. You know, I don't know if it's distribution or not. Like this move here, right? You could say, is it descending broadening wedge and it's pulling back, and we could see a breakout, right? We could say that. Is it below the 61.8? You know, where do I want to interact with this? What did the market decide at the 61.8 of this move, right? It decided we're not ready to break out, so it sent the chart back down, right? Now, what about in terms of like this last swing retracement, right? Like it did make a low and it went up, and where is it holding? Right at 317, right? 317 is support. We did see bulls step in. We did see a massive rejection wick, right? So that is an area of interest. And I think if this does break down to like 302, that would be a good counter. Now, I'm going to try to validate that by using extensions from like other runs, right? So where did this market decide that it's going to start running or consolidate before it broke out? I'm going to take this high right here. I'm going to stretch it down. And instead of 308, I'm getting 302, right? So 302 would be like the first major support if we do get a sell-off. And here we see like what could be looking like a diamond, but prices, I don't really like trading diamonds much. It's tricky. I would look for a 303 to hold a support, and I wouldn't want a top long, right? I don't like buying tops. I wouldn't want a top long. All right, let's look at AVAX. I think AVAX was looking good last stream, but you know, we did see that pullback like market wide. Still looking good right now. Still looking good right now. How do you want to fit this? I'm gonna try with this. I'm gonna start with this high, go to this low. And 102 was a target, right? I like this fib setup. Why? Because these lines are very compliant. 59 was a top. 37 was support, right? And then we saw some pivots here. Then we saw 54 hold. Then we saw 54 hold again. And then we saw a breakout to 102. Like this looks like it's super compliant. The daily looks like it tried breaking out. What's the hourly doing? So I'm gonna highlight a parallel, right? Like we look for small patterns, right? For big patterns on the daily, just like what we did on Litecoin to get that top. And then we look for smaller patterns on the intraday, because the market is literally doing the same thing over and over. We just have to be able to see it, right? So, and then once again, right? Once again, we see the red fib and the blue fib. They're compliant. By compliant, as in the chart likes them, the market likes them, and it's reacting to them where they're acting as support, right, and acting as resistance, right? So you want to see 97 hold. I think like the support levels below are going to be here, right, like 91, 87, 79, etc. Crypto Trader India, I spent the first 10 minutes looking at BTC, man. So you got to be able to rewind, and I don't like backtracking unless like there's a huge candle. Let's look at KDA. Jeez Louise. All right. I don't want to say this thing's done, but this thing went from 31 cents to 20 bucks, right? I think I could be ready for a break, right? Or at least a retest of some of these levels of like 18, 13, $8, right? Like we need to see that on the daily at least. $28 was resistance. This thing's FIB compliant. Did we see 61.8 that would signal a short? I don't think so, right? Like the only 61.8 real swing that I see that could have been bearish was this one, but the market continued up. Now, is this a bull trap? Maybe, but it's consolidating. I can't say whether continuation or not. It's looking like possibly not. This looks like maybe a compound head and shoulders. Where like, right, it could be like a shoulder neckline's not super intact, right? But I mean, it could be. I'm not a fan of it. It does look like there's been some selling, so I'd want to see a retest of these lower levels with $18 being the first support, 13, 8.5, and so forth. Now, if this was to like, I think if it was to fully break down, right, I'd want to look for $11. If it was to break down and like hold below 13, I think like 11.5 would be the 61.8 of this last move up. I'm gonna cover TradingView. TradingView's back in the house. Thank you for the 100 coins. All right, let's look at KDA. Oh, we are looking at KDA. Let's look at UTK, and then I'll go back to one. UTK USD, and let's do Binance Tether. Have a sip of my Ether coffee mug. You guys like that? I heard TradingView has some coffee mugs. I'm waiting to potentially be the winner of a TradingView mug. You can use that on stream. All right, so UTK Tether, I think 55 cents would be like the next target on this swing. If we were to fib the previous swing, the larger picture, where did this chart reject, right? It literally rejected at that red line. And I want to talk about one of my short positions that I have in the stock market after this chart, and then I'll go back to tickers, right? So I rejected it, the 61.8, and then it sold off, and then it consolidated. And now, it only makes sense that if we do close above this larger term 50 cent chart, right, that we go up and revisit 56. And until 56 breaks to the upside, I don't think the market's ready for an up move on this one, right? Like, I just don't think it is. So we want to see like 56, 71 before we can make a bigger bet. Thanks, Delilah. First person that says me to show the ship. All right, so let's look at one USD Harmony. It looks like it wants to go up, just like this daily consolidation. It looks like it's trying to break up, like it's flagging. Let's see what's happening. Right, so 32 is resistance. Once again, this chart is also like Fib compliant based on this Fib, right? We saw resistance as 38. We saw support, in terms of the wick and the close. I always talk about, wicks and closes when it comes to Fib support and resistance. And, we had a wick here, some support happening here, right? Rejection. So these fibs are valid. I would want to see 32, right? Break, right? I would want to see a close above 32, and that would kind of validate a breakout, and the next run up would be 52. All right, this would be a big move unless there's something like on this last swing that would prevent it. Some levels that would, some fib extensions that would prevent it. And what does that look like? Well, voila, here it is, right? So we're seeing 26 hold as support, right? 26 cents is holding as support, and then 29 is resistance. And then if we go do a 61.8 move on this larger swing, it would literally be 32. So until 32 breaks, right? I mean, I'd look for 26 to hold as support, and I would want to see what happens at 32. I want to cover Lucid, right? A lot of hype on this chart, and I think I'm the only one that's short. I mean, that's talking about being short, because earnings, I think they're coming up today. And I showed you guys how the market likes to react at this red line at the 61.8, right? I showed you how it did on LTC last week, on Link last week, right? And now we're talking about, where things can possibly reject, and, how Apple stalled there, and what I'm looking to do with Facebook there, right? So in terms of what I see happening now, right? I see a big 61.8 on the daily, and then when we go to the hourly, the intraday, I'm still seeing rejection here. So I'm taking a bet that this could likely break down. Earnings are coming up, and I don't know how the market's going to react to earnings. I generally don't like trading around earnings, but because there's a lot of hype on this chart, and I dislike hype traders, I'm kind of dispositions to do two things, right? To trade the fib and to kind of validate a point. All right. Let me look behind me real quick. I got some more tickers I want to cover. Like, I want to talk about Tilray. I want to talk about Can. I want to talk about other opportunities than just altcoins, right? Because that's what the market, that's what markets are about. They're about trading opportunity and not just focusing on the markets we want to trade, because it could be other opportunities elsewhere where, well, cryptos maybe go sideways or correct or do something different. So, we talked about Tilray, and I've been kind of scattering out positions with various expirations in terms of options, right? And looking at Tilray and what it done in the past, this is like a heavy gainer, and cannabis industry is heating up again. We're going up to 13.54, right? And we're not seeing a close above. But I do think we should see a push to like $14. I do have I think end of week expiry that just went in the money today on 13, and I'm really looking to get out of those at like 14, right here at the 61.8. I think we're gonna pull back after that. So that's one thing. What is Lucid target for short? Let's go back to Lucid then. So I have like a 4 weeks out type put, right? So I'm shorting via puts, not necessarily borrowing and shorting. Just, I think 32 would be a good target, right? I think 32 would be ideal. So at 32, I'd want a long, or yeah, I would definitely want to stop shorting at 32 and maybe buy 32 calls when it gets to 32. QS, something we took profits on today, right? It ran up. It's in the money. It's profitable. I've been taking profits on this run because it expires on Friday. And I did 2 take profits today. I did a full-on exit at the daily high just because we are at a 61.8, right? And I do think we're at the 15 now on this larger swing. But if you go down to this next breakdown point, right, it broke above, stayed above. I did have a pretty big position here, right? And I want to see what happens with a retest of 39.40 before re-leveraging long via buy-in calls, right? So that was a good take profit. That was a good move. What else did we sell today? All right, let's go. I'm going to go back to UTK BTC pair. look at that, right? It looks like a decent pennant, right? It looks like momentum is building up on the daily. Maybe, just maybe, you might get a breakout, right? I want to put up UTK USD too because this looks interesting. Because one chart's going to breach a 61.8 before the other, and that's going to let us know what's going to happen, right? So we're looking at 55.7 here. Meanwhile, on the BTC chart, I mean, if BTC goes for a full-blown dump, I don't know if anything else is going to be able to maintain its price right now. I think like 842 would be the first 61.8 that you want to see turn into support. And, yeah. Let me send a text real quick. I'm going to knock on my door, and I told him I'd be streaming. Give me a second, guys. Sorry. All right, I'm back. So we're looking for 844 to break before going any further. All right, let's look at Rev USD. I don't think I missed anything off. Oh, BNB. I had highlighted some buy the dip targets on BNB and last stream, and they got wrong, right? So let me see if I can find that chart again. And you guys see where that alert is, right? At 608. And what happened? It got wicked off and bought back up. And I actually left the house, right after the stream, took Stella out, my dog. And then I posted in Discord that, hey, like, we're looking at BNB being a support. We might want to counter trade it. I didn't get the opportunity to do that because I was out of the house. And I really don't like clicking buttons when I'm not at my charts, like at my computer, because I don't see the full picture. And just can't monitor on a big screen. So as of now, BNB is looking decent, right? We do have like two levels of support that overlap at 591. Now the market is, it's looks like it wants to pull back. So I think another successful bounce off 594 to 591. I'd want to long it, and because we know that BNB likes to pump during BTC corrections. It's kind of like a hedge, right? The market's done that. FTT's done that. A few coins have done that. So if we do see BTC sell off, and then BNB hold at 591, 594, I'd want to take that long and maybe like ride it to 697, 775, or maybe 829. All right. Let's look at Rev USD. Let's look at the Bittrex chart. This is looking more and more like a reversal, right? This is looking more and more promising. Where is it selling off, right? So when I say I'm like short on Lucid because it's rejecting at the 61.8, which is my red line, right? And we see charts like this do that. It doesn't sound like such a bad idea to counter trade things that rejected the 61.8, right? And now we're seeing Rev kind of do something similar. So until it gets up to 23, the chart setup, right? Like I look at the structure and it looks like a possible Adam and Eve, and it looks like it's flagging. I like that setup, and I think if it breaks above 23, 23.36. That looks good. Like for a spot trade, not leverage. I like buying lows. Like I like buying a dip on leverage, not a breakout, right? But I think on spot, this could get going. Shacker, thank you for the the shills, you guys drop me smash that like button. Smash that like button. I need y'all's emotional support today. So don't do it the channel, do it for me. All right. Let's look at Anchor. I think I covered Anchor already. What's going on with these daily closes on this last swing? Still below 61.8, right? In terms of like the larger swing, you want to see it close above 154. That's going to be like the ultimate resistance before we see a breakout, right? Like we can see charts, you know, in my mind, when a chart sells off, when a chart makes a new high, right? And it sells off and it pivots and it starts going back up. Until it breaks above the red line, I call this a bearish 61.8 retracement. And this might sound like I'm a perma bear, but I'll show you guys something that's really cool that you might not have paid attention to in the past. And this is what I'm writing my book about. Let's go to like Bitstamp chart, right? Is if you look at the bull market for the entire 2019 year, right, for BTC, it was just a bearish 61.8 retracement. This whole move up to the red line, right? We had a high up here, right, and then we had a sell-off and a low, and this whole move up was just a bearish 61.8 retracement because it never closed above 13,000 and it sold off, right? And like, well, man, that's just a one-time thing. It's really not. And if we go into all these other moves, right? If you look at this one, this swing high to this swing low, right? Where did it reject? At the 61.8, right? And then every other move was just like that, right? This one was at the red line, and the other one was red line. So that's why I have this 61.8 bias, right? And that's why I like counter trading it, right? Here was another one, and this was another one, and so forth. All right, so back to Anchor. Right, until it closes above that 15-cent mark, right? I wouldn't be so optimistic. It looks like it's trying. It looks like it's trying at least. And what's going on the smaller intraday? What kind of move was this? Where did it reject, right? It's still below, right? I mean, those two 61.8s are almost overlapping. So I'd want to see that break above, especially with like if the majors keep selling off, I'd want to see like more liquidity down before I counter trade on the way up. All right. CKB and Maker and Rune. CKB USD. I'm not going to say the market looks topped off, but a lot of charts, right, they look like they completed that 61.8, and I think they might be ready for a break, right? I mean, how many tokens did I cover that did this over the weekend, right? A lot, right? And how many are above? Very few, right, above this red line. And I talked about this on last Wednesday's stream, right? Litecoin was doing that, right, on Wednesday, and it rejected and it pulled back. And right, and then Link literally did the same thing. So if it's below that 61.8, you know, or if it's rubbing up on there, you know, maybe we should consider like taking some profits on these moves, unless we just want to like hodl and pray and trade on hope and not what the charts say. All right, let's look at Rune. I sound like a bear today, man. I sound like a bear. I don't know why. I guess like that's just what I'm seeing is 61.8 rejections. Nothing's like too promising. Rune's different. It ran up to the 786, right? It ran up another fib level. and it did break that trend, right? So on a trend break, it's looking like LTC in a sense, except for it ran up higher. It breached at 61.8. If we're gonna get continuation, what level would we want to see it find support at? I found support off the 50, which is $12.13. It looks like it's coming back down to retest it. I think at $10.94, if we see that hold as support, right, or this trend line, right, if it's gonna hold above the trend line, it's gonna be right here. And like, if we see a turn here, I'd want to trade this for continuation. A lot of today looks like a no trade zone. Let's look at Maker USD. All right. This thing looks Fib compliant, right? On this setup, I see the bull flag. I like it. I also see rejection here at the 61.8. I mean, this could be like worth maybe an entry, right? For a today chart, right? Like entry here because 30.52 is holding a support. And if it breaks above 32.68, then you let it run for a breakout. Potentially it looks good. Yeah, like it hasn't even done one full 61.8 retracement. So we could see, and it's structurally, this looks good. This is like almost a true Adam and Eve or a compound one where we have a spike, like a deep V, right? And it's actually like there's a V and a bull here, and now we're seeing the bigger V and the Eve develop, right? So this could be ready for an up move. All right, let's look at FTT. Not looking too promising right now. Looks like it broke that support channel. All right, looks like it broke support. I want to look at the Binance Tether chart because it's older than the. It's got more data. Something like this is tricky because you got all these wicks, man. Like, how do I get a fib off of this crazy wick? I can't. So I'm going to go with... I have to skip that range almost. Alright, let's go off this one. Alright, so this kind of being at support, attempting to break support. We'd want to see 54.61 hold, and then we'd want to monitor and see what kind of close we get at 47.66 if it's like a deep narrow wick, right? And then if it's like a deep narrow wick and a big candle, right, and it holds above, I'd want to interact with it there. If it's like if you get a doji or a dragonfly doji at 47.66, I'd long it. But I think because this is like a leverage token for leverage exchange, we could see a liquidity move before a run up, like the dump before the pump type thing. And we'd want to see like one of these candles, right? Like a doji. Big wick. Disney, thanks for showing me a stock. You guys, yeah, let's talk about some stocks, right? The stock market's kind of selling off. I think like we're off risking for a bit. Think we're gonna see a bigger correction. 3-day, 1 week. I'm just trying to get a big comprehensive picture. I really like this, right? Like I look at a structure like this, and this tells me that this can give us a schematic for the future, or from the past to the present, right? Like, and I think it's past all these targets. But it also gives us this like 137 support level that we might want to interact with, right? Because I mean, we've seen these fibs, right? We've seen compliance at these levels, right here, here, here again, right? So I think 137 is ideally a good level of support. I don't know what it's selling off on, if it's bad news or earnings or what the sell-off's doing. But personally, I wouldn't counter trade anything before it comes down to a major fib, right? Now, what's another structure I'd want to fib is possibly this range, right? By structure, I mean a range that was complex, that had a breakout, and that's in continuation. This is possibly another one that I'd want to interact with. What did the market do here, right? We see some compliance. We see, yeah, this looks valid too. Once again, you know, like I guess 145 would be the initial support, right? And then 137, 126. And on this major swing off the breakout retracement, yeah, 149, 140. I don't think it's ready for a long. I'd want to reassess it a little lower. And with the smallest 61.8 retracement being 149, unless if it's retracing previous extensions, and we have those lower. So I'd want to see what happens with a good close, like some wicks, right, and a good close at one of these levels, which would be 149, 146, and 140. All right. Let's see if you got any more tickers. You guys think if you want me to cover any more tickers, please do that. I'm going to cover FTM USD for Delilah. Then I'm going to look behind me, try to cover some stocks for a wrap up, and we're going to call it a day. You guys have been great. You kept me busy for almost an hour now, right? That's amazing. I was aiming for 30-minute streams 3 times a week, but when you guys are participating and giving me tickers, it's good. I can stay streaming for longer and cover more charts and more method. All right, we're getting a close below 270, right? We've seen these fibs hold up, right? Market likes them. Where can we pull back to? That's the important question, right? Like, where can we pull back to? Are we looking to buy? Are we looking to sell? What's this market telling us? So I think on the intraday, there could have been a short signal generated on this chart. I can eyeball it, right? And I think it's right here. It's a 61.8 off this high to that low, right? And this like refusal to close above 3. And now we're seeing a little bit more of a sell-off. Where can this chart dip down to? It's going to depend on how big majors want to retrace, right? Like BTC and ETH and so forth. Where are we finding support here in terms of like retracements off this last move? We saw 238 hold. I think 212 should be a decent support level that I'd want to like pay attention to. But you know, if I actually had a position in this chart and I was watching it like I was watching LTC and Link, and I wanted to hedge it, that would have been my hedge at $3. That would have been my out. I'm gonna look behind me, try to get some tickers going, and if not, if I don't find anything interesting that I wanted to talk about, then we're gonna wrap it up. So give me just a second, guys. Yeah, I think that about covers today, right? That about covers today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to us. Smash that like button one more time. And today is Money Monday, so our Discord traditional markets channels is open. So if you want to come in, join the chat, share some charts, look at the charts we're looking at, look at the buys and calls we're buying. All those channels are open. So indices, stocks, commodities, that's all in there. And today, it's open for everyone. So if you're not in our Discord, wiggle your way in there and catch us in there, right? Like you got me and the team just charting all day and sharing charts, and signaled a couple of sells today, right? So we got out of a few positions, took some profits. And all right, let's look at CLX. Man, this looks good. Look at that, dude. That looks like a dip to buy, in my opinion. That looks like a dip to freaking buy, man. 208, right? Like that would be a squeeze target. I'm not saying we're gonna get all the way up there. We're gonna take it step by step. If I was to buy calls today, it would be 177, and I'd want them like 6 months out because this chart moves slow. We tried trading this during COVID, and it was such a slow mover. And we just want to see a squeeze. They missed earning by 27, like a surprise miss. These last earnings were good by 17%. I think 177 would be my target, and I'd probably like sell half there and then see if we get a bigger swing run up to like 201, and at that point like drop the rest. Let's look for a 3-day chart. Let's see what the longer term swing says, and I really like this structure back here. Yeah, I'm glad you showed this chart, and I think like the stop on this entry would be 166. So if you get in on some calls for 177, I'd want to like put a stop at like 160 something to get out. And I'd want to price them in. I wouldn't want to do a big position right away. I'd start with like 1 or 2 contracts and then wait and see if we get down days, kind of like we did on Twitter, right? Like you guys know, I'm building up a pretty big Twitter position for. It's a leap. It's January 2023. So, yeah. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is just because it's at support. It's at Fib support, and I think it's going to run. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for all the likes. Thanks for all the attention. Thanks for all the energy. Thanks for all the tickers. It's Money Monday. So join us in Discord. It's free. And, yeah, I'll catch you in there. And if not, I'll see you on Wednesday, same time, same place. You guys have a great